Has this worked? I'm hoping this is working. Hello, everybody. It's Terry here again, dropping in for my regular Tuesday chats with you. And given that it's the first week of the month, then today it's all about me sharing some information with you to help you out. So today I've got a webinar that I've prepared, and I want to share with you about the things that I've been doing and stuff that I work with my clients and teach them about to help them in that process of creating stronger community connections. Now, why is this important? Because in anything that we do, whether it is business related, personal related, everything else, if we don't have strong connections with the people around us, the world becomes a very lonely place. And it's very difficult to be successful in a lonely place. What I've found is that whether it's, even if it's, you know, this information that I'm going to share today, I use it with my children. I use it with my husband. I use it with my friends, because the content that I want to share with you helps me to understand A, myself better, and B, them better, so that then when we communicate, that we talk on a similar plane. So often, you know, one person will be speaking and the other person will be hearing here, if you understand, you know, like we know that communication is about people hearing the message that we are wanting to share, not hearing a different message. You know, what we say and what people hear can sometimes be different. Once you understand this stuff that I want to share that goes underneath that, then what you say has a better chance of being heard in the way that you want it to be heard. I hope that makes sense. Now, while I'm going through this presentation with you, I've got my phone down here. I've got some people watching. I'm not sure who it is, so please jump on and say hi. But if you see me looking down here, that's me checking my phone to check in on comments or questions. So please, you know, chat away. It's me just working in here by myself. So if you've got any questions or want to contribute to the conversation, I'd love that, because otherwise I'm sitting here talking to a camera all by myself. So let me share with you some information that I have here for a second. Now, this presentation that I have for you today is a part of a series. So I've been working through information on the first week of every month for a little while now. If you want to go back and have a look at the other ones that I've shared about, you can find them either on my personal profile. It'll be a bit of a scroll though. However, if you go to the 10,000 Dreams page or into the Leaders in Business Facebook group that I run, then you'll be able to find that content there to have a look at this other information. So let me jump into this and we'll get started. Now, there's 3 people on here watching. Who are you? Say hello to me, please. Let me get into the slideshow from the beginning. And of course, my system likes to be a little bit on the slow side today. I have a not responding PowerPoint. Oh, here we go. How are we going here? All right, this will open eventually. Now, what I wanted to share with you today connects in with like the bigger picture of building your dreams. Now, how are we going here? Oh, Lordy B, I don't know what my computer's doing, but this is not looking so great right now. Why? I don't know why I'm drawing pictures on this. This is not what I wanted. Sorry, peeps, please bear with me while I work through this tech stuff. Here we go. All right. So my presentation was all about that, like across the last couple of months and in a couple of months going forwards as well, is all about your dreams. What are you feeding them and what do you need to achieve them? Now, when you have a look at this, conversation I want to have with you today. When you're looking at how you want to create the world that you want to live in, so how you make your own dreams come into a reality, the very first step in amongst that is creating clarity. The next thing you need to do is to build your community. Now, why is that so important? Because if you building community is so fundamentally important to being able to succeed in whatever it is that you want to do in your world. If you don't have the people around you and the infrastructure around you that is required to help you get to where it is that you want to go, there's a really good chance that you're not actually going to make it there, to be really brutally honest. We'd love to say that, yes, you can manage it all by yourself, and these things are not required. The reality is that's just not the case. And quite frankly, when you have a strong community around you, whether they are people that you work with, whether they're people who work, in terms of you work with them to help you learn faster with what you want to create, they're people who are a part of your team and work, for you in your business. They're your friendship group that support you through the challenges and that you support them through theirs. The stronger your community is, then the stronger you'll be, the more effectively you will be able to A, build towards those dreams, but B, be happier in that process. So in terms of the understanding of personalities, a really amazing book that I read for the first time many years ago is called Personality Plus. Now, why is that important? Well, it's just a really fantastic book and simple system that anybody can understand and follow, that will teach you how to understand, like I said before, it helps you to understand who you are, and it also helps you to understand the people that are around you so that you can communicate more effectively with them. Now, Florence Littauer is the author of this book. It was originally written and targeted towards her church congregation. I can't remember exactly when it was written, but it essentially, they did a really small print run to begin with, expecting it to be really just picked up by the local sort of community, and then it just kind of grew and grew and grew from there. A second book in the series has been written by Florence in conjunction with another co-author whose name I can't remember right now, and that's called Personality Plus at Work. Now, Personality Plus covers the standard personality styles, and then Personality Plus takes those and applies them in a case study kind of scenario. So if you want to go into this in more detail, I would start definitely with that first book, and then if you want a little bit more of the application, go into the second one. But I want to cover some of this content with you today to explain to you sort of my understanding of this and also the ways that I have used this. So there's 4 fundamental personality styles in the Personality Plus system. You've got the sanguine, the choleric, the melancholy, and the phlegmatic. And I'm going to come in and explain to you what those are and why they are relevant. We've all got a combination of each of these in varying degrees within us as human beings. Usually most people will have one dominant personality and then a sort of secondary one, and the other 2 will be like very, very sort of minor compared to the other 2. Not always, but often. Within each personality style, there are sort of fundamental traits. Now, while I'm talking to you guys today, I'm going to use a little bit of stereotypical language, simply because it helps to sort of paint a picture quite quickly. Within all the 4 personality styles, there are traits that can be really, really positive or really, really negative if they are taken to the extreme. What do I mean by that? So as an example, the cholerics, right? We'll come into this in more detail a little bit, but the cholerics are people who are seen as being a natural leader, right? Or the sergeant major. They're the people who are happy to stand in the front of a crowd and bark out orders when something needs to be done. Now, in a really good situation, like in a positive form of that, they're seen as being, they're the leaders, they're useful, they're happy to speak their own mind, they will tell you what needs to be done. A negative version of that could be that they'll just tell you what needs to be done all the time. then they just don't pull up on that, you know, like, so it can be that those people who have got that style of personality, when it's pushed too far and they will only give instructions and won't ever take suggestions, etc., that's when it can become a negative. So there's those sorts of ideas to apply to all this as we go through. The expression of our personality profile will also be influenced by external factors. Things like, there will be those of us who kind of mold a little bit depending on what's happening in a social situation. There will be elements like whether or not you're an introvert or an extrovert that will influence these things, whether or not you are someone who has a really good sort of self-image, or whether you're someone who's a little bit more shy and so tends to sort of sit in the background a little bit more. Those factors will play into this. It might be that you know, you've worked out that in a particular sort of social setting, a particular personality style kind of fits. So you might play to that's more strongly in your personality in that particular setting, but it's not actually who you are when you're in a situation where you're super comfortable with, you know, surrounded by friends and family and you know, in a place where you don't feel like you need to put on a show. Okay, so those sorts of factors can also influence what's happening. Understanding all of this stuff, like I said before, it helps with the accepting and understanding of yourself. And it also helps to understand what's happening with the people around you. Now, my default when I was younger, before I understood all this stuff, was that those people who were not like me were weird. Now, a lot of people default to that. It's not necessarily a good thing, but it is a fairly common thing. What happens though is that if it becomes kind of, there are a certain number of people within our population who are like us, right? And often if we've got someone who is too much like us, it becomes a bit of a challenge, because there's that whole thing about, you know, the yin and the yang, or the positive and the negative. We often operate best in a situation where we have someone who complements us as opposed to someone who is too similar to us. It's not to say that we can't work together, but when you understand different personality traits, when you understand different communication styles, you can then adjust the way that you speak. So whether or not you speak quickly or slowly, whether you work into details or whether you sort of gloss across the surface, whether you're focused on the fun or the productivity when you are explaining something that needs to be done, all those things, it's still getting the same message across, but it's about, like I said before, speaking your message and having it received in the way that you want it to be received. When you understand the personality type of the person who you are speaking to and their communication style that is connected to that, you can modify what you say to get the message across in the way that they will receive it, in the way that you want it to be received. All right. So this is one of the ways that you can actually use that information. So like I said, for those of you who are watching right now, please pop a little comment on here. Mary Beth, hello. Oh, I love it when you jump on. Anyone else who's on here, please, you know, add a comment, say hello, throw questions at me, challenge me if you don't like what I'm saying. I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you as best we can. Mary Beth said, yes, we know how much communication helps. Absolutely, man alive. The better we can communicate, the more efficiently the world runs, essentially. Anyway, let's keep moving. So, sanguine personalities. These are the bright and bubbly. Oh, look at that typo. Bright and bubbly people. Okay, they are seen often as being the ones who are full of energy. They're often the life of the party. They are definitely the entertainer. Now, they will focus on the fun over the details, and sometimes that means the fun over the accuracy. And they have a strong innate desire to be liked by others. Now, here's the thing. As an example, I was talking before about how you can take this and run it to a positive or a negative. A sanguine is likely to be at a party, dressed in beautifully flamboyant colours. And often they will be holding court with a whole bunch of people around them, and they will be chatting away, telling stories, etc. And they could be telling you about this amazing trip that they took where they went on a cruise ship and they were invited to sit at the captain's table and that they won all this money on the poker machines and they did these amazing events and and telling about this amazing holiday that they had and keeping everybody completely enthralled and entertained with the stories that they're telling, which is amazing, truly amazing. But then but if you take that to the extreme, you may find that that person actually never left home. But to the extreme sanguine personality, that's not the point. The point is that in the midst of that conversation, they were entertaining the people that they were there with, and they were making that party fun. The fact that the entire story that everybody else probably believed was true was a story that they had made up to an extreme sanguine can be completely irrelevant. And it's not that they necessarily want to mislead people or to lie to people or be deceptive. Their driver is about fun and entertainment. And if they have told you this amazing story and created this fun and entertaining environment, then they have done a good job as far as they're concerned. Okay, so it's just a little bit something to be mindful of when you do know people who are of a sanguine personality. Where am I going now? Okay, cholerics. So we spoke about cholerics very briefly before. The cholerics are seen as the sergeant major. They are the natural leader or aka bossy, depending on your perspective. They can be very, very strong in their opinions and they can be hard to reason with. I'm sure we have, there are people like this everywhere. There's one right here. It's the cholerics are, if it's their idea, it's a good idea. If it's not their idea, it'll take a lot to be considered. There's a lot of, they're just very, very strong, very focused people. And again, we have the positive and the negative in that, depending on the perspective, on the application, those sorts of things. Your melancholy personalities, they are the details-oriented people. They are often absolutely meticulous in all that they do, in all that they say. They are, if in a woman, you will see that they are probably the person who has got the perfect hair, the perfectly organized like makeup, their hair is perfectly straightened, their outfits are perfectly put together, the details are on point. Accuracy to these people is of the utmost importance. It is so important that you are accurate in what you say, how you present, everything. Your phlegmatics, these are the chilled out people. These are the people that if they get a chance, they want to sit down, and if they can sit down, then they can lie down, and they can lie down, they can probably have a nap. Now, why? Because there's going to be something important come up later on, and they have that, and they want to conserve energy for when something is important. And if it's not important, it doesn't deserve any energy at all. They are absolutely single-minded when it comes to pursuing a goal. If you think about a little tugboat, right? Tugboat in a great big ocean, shoving around ocean liners. A tugboat, it doesn't matter what's in its way, it will just power on through. These are what phlegmatics are like when they have a goal in mind. They will just work and work and work and work, and everything else just becomes completely irrelevant until they actually achieve their goal. They are the calm in the storm. These people are amazing in an emergency. They are the people who want to, when all hell is, what is that saying about, when all the world around you is crashing and you can keep your own mind? I can't remember the actual phrase of it, but that's a phlegmatic personality. They will go, oh, that's not worth the energy. The whole thing about prioritizing where the energy needs to go to, they can look around, see chaos around them and go, well, I need you to get this and I need you to take care of that. My husband has a strong phlegmatic part to his personality. And I will always remember about 10 years ago now, our son cut his arm very badly on a piece of glass. And I just looked at it and went to jelly. I find that if we have an emergency situation and there's anyone else around, I go to jelly. I can deal with it if I am the adult, right? I literally went to jelly. I didn't know what to do. And he just very calmly said, you know, Terri, do this, Gordy, do that, Alana, do this. Alana's our daughter, Gordy's our son. You know, and he just very peacefully guided us all around through that whole negotiation of, you know, we had to first take care of the wound, and then we had to call the ambulance, and then I needed to clean up the mess that was there. And yeah, but he was so peaceful and so calm and so grounded through the whole process. And it's because that really beautiful phlegmatic side of his personality came into being, especially in that particular situation. They are, like I said, they are the calm in the storm. Phlegmatics can come across as being aloof or rude. Now, why is that? Because if they see that the conversation that you want to have with them is not worth their energy, they just won't. They don't see a need to actually engage in conversation with you. So it's not necessarily, some people are aloof and rude. That's a whole nother conversation. But as a phlegmatic, if they are, like, their true personality is not like that, sometimes it's simply that they don't think it's worth having the conversation with you, so they won't. Phlegmatics are also, so when it comes to like the way that you speak to people, phlegmatics are often those people who speak very slowly, who are quite mindful of their words. They won't use adjectives because that's an unnecessary effort in the conversation, right? They just say what needs to be said and nothing else. So there's lots of those sorts of things that you can use in the way that you communicate with people. So if you consider, what I want you to do is consider right now how this applies to the people that you already know. So the easiest thing is, okay, if you have a significant other. Now, there's 4 people on the conversation in here, according to my phone. And I have only seen a hello from Mary Beth. So if you're on here, please jump in, say hello. If you're jumping in on a replay, mention that as well later on. But there's 4 people looking here live. I'd love to hear from you, and I'd love to hear if this information is helping you. So if you have a significant other in your life, or whoever's the closest person to you, whether it's your partner, whether it's your kids, whether it's your sister or brother or mother or whoever, somebody, your best friend, have a think about that person that you know really, really well. And see if you can have a think about whether or not they are the sanguine entertainer. Are they the choleric sergeant major? Are they the melancholy details people? Or are they more of the phlegmatic, calm in the storm, mellowed out sort of person? Which one is the most relevant? Like I said, there's going to be combinations, but there's usually one that is a little bit more than the other. So how does that apply to the people that you already know who are with you? And how can that help guide you when you're having a conversation with them? Okay, particularly I find this becomes really, really important if you're having one of those sort of touchy conversations. Say something's come up that you know needs to be addressed. The more that you can drop into the communication style of the other person, like I said before, the more that what you're trying to say is likely to be received in the way you want it to be received. So if you have a phlegmatic family member, and that phlegmatic means that they are not, I don't know, stuff's not being put away. It's my home, right? An example of how this happened, I didn't even realize that this happened, but it's when I look back now, it's an example of how this happened in our house just over the weekend. There was some stuff sitting in a walkway, and I went to walk and I knocked it, and I had a basket full of washing, so it was really not a great thing to be tripping over stuff. And my default was to yell because I do that a bit, but also I'm a choleric, you know, there's the sergeant major that's in that personality of mine. Plus I'm a sanguine. I like to, you know, I like to talk a lot, and I like to, I speak quite quickly. So what happened is, you know, I bumped into this stuff, and I took a breath, and I said, I can't remember who I directed it to now, because there was my husband and someone both sitting in our lounge room. But I said, can somebody please do something about widening this walkway? And I left it at that. And do you know what happened? That stuff, which had been sitting there for way too long, was moved within a matter of minutes. It was awesome. And I look back at it now, and there's a few other factors that played into it as well. But part of it was the fact that I just stopped and I asked for it to happen in a very calm and concise way, as opposed to wanting to swear. And so I can't speak for my husband and son. I can't tell you exactly what it is that made things happen. But what I do know is that the desired outcome happened. What I was looking for in terms of stuff moving actually got moved. So what's important, I think, amongst this is to use this information in a way that can help the situations that you're faced with. And yes, absolutely, Mary Beth, she said it depends on the situation. No question. There is no question that the way that we communicate needs to be dictated partly by the situation. However, it's also important to know that the way that we communicate with different people will be about, if I had a sanguine person in the house and I'm like, oh, let's move this out so we can like stand here and dance, right? In terms of making that walkway bigger. That would be like, oh, dancing's fun. Well, let's make space for dancing, right? So there's different ways that you can apply the information in a similar situation. How does this information apply to you as an individual? Has this been able to help you to identify the things that are important to you in terms of the way that you communicate, what you value, and where that personality style sits within you is really important in terms of a whole range of things that happen within the way that you interact with the world and with the people that you love. So how do you use this information to build rapport with the people that you meet more quickly and effectively? Because the beginning of sharing all this in the beginning was to help you with building your community, because you want to build strong community connections. The stronger your community connections, then the more quickly you will get to be in that space of the world that you want to create for yourself, right? But so one of the things that you can do is, as you get to meet people, even when you first see somebody, I mentioned before about the sanguines wearing like, the super loud, colorful clothing. The melancholies are going to be dressed and absolutely meticulously put together. The cholerics are likely to be in something that's a little bit more formal than most other people around them. Your phlegmatics are going to be in whatever is the most comfortable and whatever is the easiest to put on that day. So even when you first walk into a room, if you know nobody in that space, there will be pointers. Like, it's a little indication. If you see someone who's think of, say, a room full of corporates, right, where you've got lots and lots of suits, and then there's somebody who's in a red, like something that's a bright red flamboyant outfit, that person is likely to be a sanguine. The people who've got their ties loosened because they've had enough, they've either had a really rough day, or they're more likely to be the phlegmatics. So this information, you can use it to give you little pointers. It's not necessarily an absolute, obviously. We do need to be careful in terms of making assumptions and jumping into the stereotypes. That goes without saying as far as I'm concerned. What I'm saying is that these little things can be used pointers to help you work out who fits where in amongst all this, and also then who you're more likely to be comfortable talking to. Okay, who else is? Hey, Troy. I can see Troy Mays is on here, and Mitch. Hello. All right. So another element that I have found super, super helpful in terms of building community, and I'll tie these two together at the end, I promise, is yeah, I've been talking for too long. The 5 Love Languages. This is another book that I read probably 20 years ago for the first time now, written by Gary Chapman, another one of these books that was written, directed again towards a church community, a congregation. that has just the 5 love languages in particular. Oh my goodness, it is everywhere. And there are now multiple books that have been written in terms of, love languages for couples, for teens, for children. There's a bunch of different options that are out there. I've been able to get what I needed out of just the original book. I'm not saying don't read the others. I'm just saying start here, see where you go to from there if you want to dig into more detail in around the 5 love languages. Now, why is this important? Let me explain to you the basis underneath the whole love languages book to begin with. The 5 love languages talks about the fact that we all have different ways that we show and receive love. Okay. Now, what do we mean by that? Think of your most loving relationship. In my case, I'm going to talk about my husband because I have one, right? If you have a husband or a wife or a significant other, that's probably the relationship that is most relevant in terms of this, but it also applies to every relationship in varying degrees with those people that you care about. So there's 5 basic love languages that are called, we've got physical touch, words of affirmation, acts of service, quality time, and gifts. Now, why are these important? It's kind of like, it's called love languages for a reason. If you think about these as being spoken languages, right? Say we've got English, Japanese, Spanish, right? If I speak in English and the people that I talk to only understand Japanese, they're not going to have any clue on what I'm saying. They're not going to be able to understand the messages that I'm trying to give them because they won't understand the language that I'm speaking. And similarly, this happens in terms of when we go to express love to the people that we care about. If we are a physical touch person and the person that we are trying to show love to is a words of affirmations person, they're not going to feel loved because you're going to be all touchy-feely and they're going to be like, go away. But they're going to say to you, I love you, but they won't want to touch you. And so you're not going to feel loved because you're not getting the touch that you need. They're not going to feel loved because they're not hearing you say that I love you. Okay, so this is how this all pans out. Let me go into this a bit further though. So the value that, like I said, you can read down the bottom there, the value we place on these is dependent on who we are. And it can be that we do great big flashy thing, great big and flashy sort of demonstrations of love, or it might be small and obscure. And if you think about what we were just speaking about when we were talking about the personality types, if you know somebody who is big and flashy in the way that they show, like it is who their personality is, they're probably a sanguine, right? And if that sanguine is a gifts person, then they're going to want the biggest, loudest, fanciest gifts that they can spruik to all their friends about, right? Because it fills their cup for who they are. Let me come back into that in a little bit. So like I said before, if we don't speak a person's love languages, then our demonstration of emotion is not going to fill their tank, or they're not going to hear what it is that what we are saying to them. A little sideline to this, as a general rule, our children don't, or all children in general, don't necessarily sort of develop a specific love language until they are sort of that, 7 to 10 years old. So it's really important with children in particular to kind of go through all of those 5 love languages every single day so that your children feel loved. If you are very strongly a physical touch person and your child needs gifts or words of affirmation and they're not getting that each day, then your children can end up feeling like they are actually not that important to you. And I know that, to me, that's just breaks my heart, because every single person I know who has children, their children are so, so important to them. But if we don't speak their language, it's that where I said before, what we say one thing and we want people to hear that one thing. And if they're not hearing that, then we're not communicating in a way that's necessary. And so this is about communicating your love to those people who are important to you. This information can be used in both the positive and the negative. So if we just go back into the kid situation for a moment, any loving parent needs to be able to discipline their child one way or another. Now, if you've got a child who is very much words of affirmation, you can use those words to build them up, or you can use those words to discipline and pull them into the line far more effectively than, say, giving or taking away a gift, right? So there's ways. I'll talk a little bit about that as we go further in. People who have an empty emotional tank. Hi, Nat, nice to see you. Those of us who have an empty emotional tank will often act out and try to get attention other ways. So people who kind of, it's really common. So if you've got children who are acting out, obviously there's a bazillion reasons why that children can act out. They're trying to get your attention for one way or another. But similarly, this travels through all the way through into adulthood. There will be those who kind of act out in different ways, who are looking for attention because they are feeling that their emotional tank is empty. If we can work out what their love language is and speak to that, then it will often help them to kind of balance out that behavior a little bit. So, physical touch. Any physical contact comes down to physical touch. Obviously, when you've got to be conscious of this within a workplace environment. There's a spot, I think it's just here, like just above the elbow, where you can actually touch people, and it's not seen as being, there's no sexual connotation with that, because obviously we've got to be conscious of those things in the workplace. But in any physical contact can be a good thing for those who are physical touch oriented. And obviously, with all the stuff that's been happening globally, thankfully much more so outside Australia than in it right now, where we are, but where we're being encouraged to socially distance, it's very, very hard for those people who are physical touch people. Very hard also for single people who are physical touch people who live alone. If they don't have the contact of another human being with them and don't get that physical touch. In terms of a kid, it could be literally just walking past, ruffling their hair or patting them on the back. There's lots of different ways. Obviously, you don't necessarily want to ruffle an adult's hair. Depends on your relationship, I guess. But any physical touch can help to fill that emotional tank for a person whose primary love language is physical touch. Hugs and kisses are a very much obvious one. And shaking hands is a really important one, particularly in Australian society for the men. A note about the male gender. Yes. When it comes to men as as an entire gender are very physically oriented when it comes to expressing love. Simply that they'd rather go like. I had a word worked out for this and I can't get it out right now. Men are sexually oriented. One way to work out whether, often when you start talking about love languages with male people, they will often say that they are a physical touch person because of that orientation. Again, very stereotypical. This is not everybody. I'm just putting it out there to communicate this in the most time-efficient way that I can. If for whatever reason sexual is no longer an option, what then? This is like literally this is the question that I posed to my husband. If we could never have sex again, how would you know that I love you? And that answer will give you an idea as to what their true love language is. It may still be that it's the hugs and kisses, which is completely fine. It just gives you an idea to get beyond that initial step. Okay, next one, words of affirmation. Excuse me. Words of affirmation is literally saying nice things to people, right? Genuine compliments. They are expressing thanks and gratitude, complimenting others. These are the things that people who are words of affirmations people for them, it is vitally important to hear that they have done a good job. They're the sorts of people who will turn around and go, well, did you like it? And what did you like about it? And why did you like that? If they've done something for you, which is great. They need the feedback, but it fills their emotional tank to know that they have done something that you like, and for them to hear that. Oh, Mitch, sorry, I'm just Mitch has put a lovely comment in here. These topics are a killer, a must know, applicable to all aspects of our day-to-day life. Keep rocking it, Terry. And that says nice. Awesome. Thank you. I'm glad you're getting some value out of this. So, words of affirmations, and how do we use that? Think about our kids. I was talking before about if you've got a child. So I've got a teenager at home right now who's 14, love him to bits, could happily choke him every so often. If you're a parent of teenagers, I think you know what I'm talking about. He's pretty strongly a words of affirmations kid. Now, if we say to him, you're doing a great job, I'm really proud of you, he just lights up, right? And then if he, drops the ball a little bit, as we all do, and we say something about it, you can almost watch him crumble in front of our eyes. Now, I don't want my son to crumble, but I have a standard and I expect my son to meet that. And, we're not super horrible parents like that. It's simply that in our case, using words to lift up and also to correct behavior is really effective with this person. If he was more of a, say, gifts person, then it would be like taking his phone away, would be more effective than telling him that that this wasn't a good enough job, right? Believe me, I've done both. But what I'm saying is that knowing which one is the stronger can help you to kind of guide through that process of using your knowledge of love languages with both the positive and in the negative as required. So equally, if you're, we all have that thing about, hurting people hurt people. If there's somebody, who's really inflicting discomfort on you, you're a words of affirmations person and they keep criticizing what you're doing, that's going to cut you like massively, so much more than someone who's maybe a gifts oriented person, right? So understanding the dynamic of what's happening, about how this can influence you, whether you are, what your love language is, and how people are saying that, how you're expressing that, but also what you're receiving. Acts of service is the next one. Now, acts of service is my primary love language. I love doing things for other people just to help them, right? It's something that I've always done. There's a reason why I was a stay-at-home parent for so many years, primarily. I did lots of other stuff as well, but my focus was always on creating the home that I wanted for our children, or that we wanted for our children. I don't expect a return for that, other than I'm hoping that my children will grow up to be happy human beings. But doing things for others without expectation of return is something that I do a lot, and I love to do it. It's just, I love to be able to help other people. It's who I am. It's very common for this to be a primary love language for stay-at-home mums and carers and people within those kinds of fields. Something that, like, for me, you make me a cup of tea or coffee and bring it to me without any prompting, oh my goodness, like that just lights me up, because someone has thought of something that would help me and has done it without, and has put in, it's like it takes nothing to make a cuppa, right? But if my son or right now my husband's out in the other room on a conversation, but if he was to walk in here with a cup of tea right now, like, hello, I'd be completely just pausing this webinar so that I could grab that from him, right? Because I just completely love that stuff. Acts of service people are pretty easy to please, honestly. Well, I am anyway. Quality time. Now, quality time is literally time spent together doing anything, or sometimes absolutely nothing. When I had that conversation with my husband about how would you know that I loved you? His answer was, we'd go for picnics. He's a quality time person. It takes very little effort to put together stuff for a picnic. it takes a little effort, but it does take a little bit of planning, and it is time spent together doing not very much. Okay, Nat's put, haha, thoughtful too from that person. Absolutely, Nat. So this comes back to the making a cup of tea or something. Somebody has put in the effort of thinking, oh, I'm having a cup of tea, maybe Terri would like one too, and I'll make it for her the way that she likes it, and I'll deliver it to her office because she's busy. Like, simple. My kitchen is literally straight through that wall. You've got to just walk, I don't know, 15 steps, I guess, to get around here. But it's nothing, but it just makes me really, really happy. So quality time. So time together doing anything or nothing. It's just time. So picnics, board games, long lunches, time in front of TV even can be one of the things. So literally, one of the things that I have started to do a lot is, rightly or wrongly, my husband likes to spend time in front of the monster of a television that we've ended up with. I sit beside him. Oftentimes I don't even particularly like the show that we're watching, but I'm sitting there with him, and so he feels like we're getting more time together. It works, right? Gives me a little bit of downtime too, because I don't like to stop very often. All right, next one, gifts. This is pretty easy. It's the giving and the receiving. It is important in the process of both. So me, I'm a person who loves to give gifts. I'm not so excited about the receiving of gifts. So gifting to me comes into more of it's actually more of an acts of service kind of thing, in that I like to see something that people love, and then, or that I think that they will love, and give it to them. The receiving for me, I'm very selective about that, because on a completely different scale, we have a clutter problem in my house. I love that people will go to the effort of thinking of me and buying something and gifting it to me. But because I've got so much other stuff in my house right now that I am very, very slowly working through and trying to minimize, then sometimes the receiving of a gift is not exactly, I appreciate the effort and everything that goes into it, but the actual gift itself is not necessarily a great thing for me, right? This is just my take on gifts. You'll see the kids who are gift givers who, they're the ones who will always want to give you a flower or a pretty rock that they picked up, or maybe they want to share their favorite toy with you, right? When you think about the little people, that's their sign that they love gifts, right? It might be that you go, okay, I made you a special little plate. Here's, you could give them a little meal, but make it really look pretty, because that will, shows them that you made that little bit of an effort, and it turns what would be just a standard meal into a little bit of a gift for them. Okay. Natalie says triggers fatigue, like where will I put this? Oh, absolutely, with the clutter stuff. No question. Oh my good Lord. It's a big work in progress, Nat. So yeah, the giving and receiving of gifts is equally important to people who are very gifts oriented. The whole process of wrapping a gift, putting in that extra thought, making sure that it's a gift that's really relevant, it all adds to the experience. And often the dollar value of a gift is not that relevant to someone who is a true gifts person. Not always. Sometimes it's very important. It depends on the individual, but it is less common for those who are, the dollar value is less relevant for those people who are very, very strongly gifts oriented. So, nearly done, peeps. Combining your knowledge of your personality styles that we've gone through at the beginning, so your choleric, sanguine, phlegmatic, and melancholies, right? Combining all that information with the love languages can massively, and I cannot underemphasize how massively this can improve your capacity for powerful connections with the important people in your life. Now, those important people may be people you haven't even met yet. Okay, they may be people who are still to come into your life, but the more that you understand the personality styles and the love languages, the more important, the more effectively you can build those really strong connections. I want to give you a little quick example. I want you to consider the personality of a particular client of yours and their love language, right? And how that can, let me just see, oh, there we go. And how that may influence a future business decision for you. Now, put yourself in this scenario. You've got a really successful business. You've got a select few clients that you want to give some kind of special gift to, whether maybe it's a birthday or Christmas thing. It's some kind of acknowledgement of the impact that they have had on your business, right? Now, imagine as an example that you have someone who, as a client, who is strongly sanguine, and they're also gifts oriented. So your sanguines who are gifts oriented are the people who are likely to rock up. I remember going to meet up with a coach of mine in Brisbane one day. They lived in like Tenerife, one of those sorts of areas. I can't remember exactly. Lovely space, but literally they had this massive house and about that much garden bed each side of it. Like there was just no extra room. And I was living in a little old house on 2 acres at the time. Completely loved the place. But we had like a lovely herb garden going. We had chooks at the back. So I took them a little bouquet of herbs and a dozen eggs from home, because I knew that they didn't have the space. The garden that they did have was, perfectly manicured and hedges and all this sort of stuff, which is beautiful. It just, they didn't have any space to be growing. So me taking them fresh herbs and fresh eggs that had been laid, like in the last 24 to 48 hours from our chooks, for them was something that they basically couldn't get access to, right? So me as a client rocking up there with that, who was, when I was going there to get their help, that's an indication to them that I am a gifts person. So if you've got someone who does that sort of thing, or maybe there's someone who, every time that they meet up with you, they want to buy you a coffee, they're often gifts people. So now have a think about from the return, from your business wanting to give that person a gift for Christmas or something as a thank you. So if they're a sanguine, big flashy, life of the party kind of personality, and they're a gifts person, then a big flashy gift is something that they're going to really love. So whether that's, things like maybe it's a great big gorgeous hamper, or maybe you would, gift them an experience to say, like one of those red balloon experiences that could be something that's like high adrenaline, right? There's all those sorts of options. If they're more of, maybe they're more of a little bit more introverted, like a different personality again. Perhaps you've, say, got a melancholy client who's really into the details. These are the people who, if you're asking them to, I'm going to pick on Nat because I know that she's been on the chat. So Nat is a very talented graphic designer and web designer. When Nat has clients who are of a melancholy nature, they're going to be the ones who really need every single detail absolutely perfect. They are the ones who will want to move things by like an absolute micromillimeter to get it into just the right spot. Now, if Nat wants to be able to give her clients something that is, as a special thank you to that particular client, then maybe it's something like getting a beautifully engraved pen that has, say, their logo and stuff engraved in absolute precision detail, so that then but it's something that is a little bit understated. It's something that is of significant value to them, but it's not necessarily something that is, it doesn't have to be the big and flashy, because a melancholy personality is unlikely to actually be big and flashy. They are a little bit more on the subdued side. Maybe you've got someone else who's like, gives you a great big hug and a kiss every time that they see you, even though you don't actually feel like you know them very well. That's an indication they're possibly a physical touch person. So maybe that person is more into, maybe a massage for those would be an amazing gift instead. So there's all these things that you can tie into your understanding of personality profiles, communication styles, and love languages, that when you blend it all together and pull it into how you build those relationships and connections within community, that just can really make everything sing. And this is this, like, so this is the kind of stuff that Nat says, yes, totally. I can hear you saying that too, Nat. So these are the types of conversations that I have with my clients all the time. Literally, a lot of the examples that I've given you, that in terms of, you know, as I've worked through this and tried to explain stuff, it can be like it's client conversations and interactions that I've used as examples basically all the way through this, except for those of you who I said it's a husband or a son. So Nat said, so if you send a hamper to a client, it can actually fall like a stone. Absolutely. Oh my goodness. If you so for me, okay, like I said before, we've got a clutter issue in my home. You send me a hamper, and unless it's food, but even my pantry is busting at the seams, most hampers to me, I just look at them and go, really? Like, hampers are beautiful. I really appreciate the fact that hampers exist. There are so many people who love them there, and I like most hampers have got a fairly big variety in them, so it can tick like different boxes. Say you've got a foodie versus like a physical touch. Maybe you've got a massage oil and a, you know, beautiful biscuits in there. You know, like you've got a few different things. Hampers are great in kind of a broad perspective. But there are those people who will look at a hamper and just kind of cringe, right? Because it just becomes too much. It's too hard to deal with. It becomes another thing to have to sort out. For me, I love the idea of a hamper, but the reality of it in my home, it's just hard work. The exception to that probably is stationery. But even then, I've got so much, like, because I'm a little bit of a stationery nut, right? Most people aren't. If you're going to send a hamper, though, you're not going to send a stationery hamper for starters. But also, too, I've got so much I don't really need anymore. I've got so much of everything. And I'm not complaining. I have created this mayhem, and I'm very grateful for the abundance. So it's just that there is so much abundance right now. Yeah, and that said, like I said, if they are on keto or something, absolutely. If you're going to send a hamper, a food hamper in particular, often it's loaded with chocolates and, you know, biscuits and all those really lovely things. And if people are trying to follow a particular eating pattern, then yes, it can be more of a challenge than a good thing. So there's lots, like, hampers are a safe bet if you don't know your clients. That's what I see a hamper as being. Hampers are the things that you give to the people that you don't really know, because they cover a lot of bases. But if you're wanting to really impress the clients that you have, if you want to have a really strong connection, if you want to really build the connection with them and show your true appreciation of who they are as an individual, then understanding their personality type and their love language and you know, things like I said, yes, gifts are important to me, acts of service more so. But for me, like I said, in most cases, a hamper is just not the sort of thing that I get excited about because of the other implications with how my house works, right? It's just who I am. So it's just the more that you can tie that stuff in, the more that you can use that information, the more it will actually help you to build those strong community connections. I've pretty much covered everything I wanted to go through today. If you've got any questions, please pop them in the chat. I will come back in here and have a look at those questions later on as soon as I can. If there's anything that I've missed, I apologize. I'll go back and have a scroll through straight away. But please, you know, ask me any questions you like. I'm obviously more than happy to chat. Happy to share what I have. And there's, you know, if you've got any more information, like I said, if there's anything else, jump in. We can always hop on a call and dig into this further if you'd really like some help with it. And in the meantime, it's bye from me.